Hello all. It's nice to be talking about something good again after having to deal with 9 weeks of She-Hulk. So I'm going to be talking about episode 7 of the Orville, season 3, and the episode is called From Unknown Graves. Now at first glance, I remembered this as being a bit of a filler episode with some interesting bits in it, but I just watched it again and it's far more complex than I first gave it credit for. The core of its story is quite simple. But what it does, like all great shows, it develops relationships and personalities and characters. There's 3 stories in this. 2 of them are interlinked in a certain way. The third one has a link, but it's a much weaker link. So I'll address them one by one. I'll start with the very beginning of the programme, which opens with an alien planet, a father coming home. Kids excited that dad's home, and these all seem like lovely people. And the dad wheels in this box, and the kids are excited to see what it is, and the wife's excited. And when they open the box, it's a Kalon. Obviously, this is meant to make you think, what the hell's going on here? Have the Kalon got a new plan? But all is not as it seems. And the scenes of the Kalon are interspersed throughout the episode, but I will address that when I get to that point. What's presented as the main story is an attempt to convince a matriarchal society, the Genesi, to join the Union. But this society treats men as subservient, and therefore Mercer and Kelly come up with a plan to win their confidence to start with and then expose them slowly to the realities of the Union life and their lives. So what they do is they have the male officers out of the way and they pretend that the ship is run by the female officers. Kelly assumes to be captain, Tala is first officer, and Charlie is chief engineer. And there's quite a funny scene when they arrive because Mercer and Gordon have to carry the bags. It's a bit of a slapstick scene, which is quite surprising for this show. But it's quite funny as they're trying to carry these ridiculously large amount of bags. It's also kind of a funny commentary on women and bags. Anyway, they're entertaining these Genesi, the 3 delegates, showing them around the ship, getting all the men out of the way just so that they don't offend them. And it all comes to a head at a dinner, because at this point they want to start introducing the idea that they work together with the men. Kelly explains that the men are going to be at the dinner so they can develop and learn, because they never know who might be responsible in a dangerous situation. And it's further explained that the Genesi believe that men are dangerous and all of their conflicts throughout their histories and the war have been caused by men. Charlie's response to this revelation is to say that there's been several in their history as well, but that they don't judge all men by the actions of some. Now that's an important point. It's a thread that leads to a later point of realisation. One of the Genesi decides to take possession of Ed and say that she wants to basically use him for sex, and that's when it all reaches a head, and Kelly says, Ed's the captain, we wanted you to feel comfortable before we expressed that we were all equals on the ship. The Genesi are offended, but that they were lied to, and they storm out and say, we're leaving. In a last-ditch attempt to save the situation, after poring over their laws, Kelly comes up with the idea that they need to establish a connection more personally. And in Genesi marriages, the men have to stay faithful, but the women are allowed to have relationships with other men. And this is where they find common ground, because obviously Kelly cheated on Ed, but Ed expresses that he still trusts her and would trust her with his life. And the Genesi find value in that and say that you can send an envoy. Within this, there are several comments about how this is just another Moclan, another intolerant society. But also there's a few funny moments where Bortus, the Moclan on the ship, comments about what terrible people they are, showing a complete lack of self-awareness, but it's quite funnily done. The slight side story is the relationship between Lamar and Tala, which has progressed to being far more physical. However, because Tala is far stronger than John, she causes him physical pain and breaks bones during their intimacy, shall we say. And he has to go to the doctor and get it mended. Then the doctor's confused why this keeps happening, because he says it's a training exercise. Tala stops returning his calls. He tries to get in touch with her, drags her out of a meeting and says, this matters to me. This means something. She says the same. It means something to her. And he convinces her to try again. Another bout of intimacy, more broken bones. Lamar has a conversation with Gordon about how much he likes Tala and how connected he is to her, and how frustrating it is and he draws a comparison between him and Isaac. Isaac lacks the emotion but has the body that can cope with Tala. John has the emotion but lacks the physical resilience to have that relationship. Sadly, although it's played for comedy, the relationship ends when Tala's lying in bed crying and the camera zooms out and you can see that John is a bloody mess. And she's saying, I'm sorry, this is going to end. And he's talking about how much he cares, and then he spits his teeth out onto his chest and then gets out of bed. So it's quite sad that you've got two people who are so connected but can't be together. But it is played much lighter and it is kind of played for laughs. This is probably actually the main story, although it's not necessarily played that way. And within it there is reference to the start of the episode with the arrival of the Kalon at the family house. And I'll go through that when I get to a particular point. So the Orville are meeting the Genesi in a neutral part of space, which is above this planet, which is supposed to be deserted. After the Genesi board, they discover a signal on the planet, or a power surge, or a power source. Mercer, Bortus, Gordon and Charlie go to the planet, find the power source and discover a Kalon there. They draw their guns, obviously threatened, Charlie especially so. But the Kalon says, I'm not here to harm you, I won't harm you, I'm not even armed. And it turns out this Kalon crashed onto this planet after the invasion. His two shipmates were killed and he was found by Vilka and her late father. They repaired him and rewired him using his pain receptor to modify his brain so that he could actually experience emotions. The crew are a little unsure about this, obviously especially Charlie, but they agree to take them on board the ship because the Union has to know about this. They discover that it's all true. I was expecting this to be a bit of a Trojan horse, but it doesn't turn out to be. Malloy is investigating what's happened and what's been done, and he's amazed and shocked about how amazing the work is. There's a scene between Claire and Isaac where they're having dinner together, and it's quite a light comedic scene where Isaac is being Isaac. He's not sure if they're in a relationship. Claire says, we'll know when we're in a relationship, it's a gut feeling, and Isaac's kind of like, I don't have gut feelings. So Claire says, I'll tell you. And that's quite a nice light comedic scene. Isaac meets Timis, who is the other Kalon, in case I didn't mention his name. And Timis expresses to him how amazing it is having emotions, how deep his remorse for what happened, and how he doesn't understand how the Kalon could have felt that way about humans, because not all humans and not all the life forms are the same as their makers. And Isaac says that he came to the same conclusion, which Timis almost congratulates him for, because Timis said it wasn't until he had the motions that he could figure that out, but Isaac did it without. Which gives the impression that the Kalon can evolve beyond their programming, something highlighted further in this episode. Timis tells Isaac that he can have the emotions too, that what's been done to him can be done to Isaac. Isaac then meets up with the doctor a little bit later, and the doctor starts talking to him about it, and he tells the doctor, Claire, that he can also be rewired to feel the emotions. But he doesn't see any point to it because it won't make him any more efficient, and Claire's a little bit dumbstruck by this. So Claire's having trouble with this, and she goes to see Kelly, and she expresses to Kelly that Isaac could have this operation, if you like, to give him emotions, but he won't even consider it, and it's important to her. Kelly says, have you asked him to do it for you? When I was with Ed, I never asked. I never said to him, can you change for me? And Claire's kind of, I could ask him. And she's a little reticent, but I just think to myself, you don't know what this will do to him. You don't know who he'll become. He might completely change who he is. It might destroy who he is. It's not like Mercer being asked to change his behaviours. This could fundamentally change who Isaac is at a basic level, and it just felt a very selfish position. I understand it because she has needs, but she's the one who's made the decision to be with Isaac knowing that he has no emotions. And there's something else in there as well. When they have a meal together, she expects him to change into a more human form. And that feels a little off as well. I understand it, but it feels off. Claire and Isaac are having another meal, and Claire's talking to Isaac about it, and she's quite insistent in the way she's talking. And it's not so much she's asking as demanding. And then she kind of gaslights him. saying this will give you a journey and it will be an interesting experiment. You'll experience and understand things you maybe didn't before. Consider it as a way of educating yourself. I say that felt very, very manipulative. So in the middle of this, Charlie goes into engineering where Timis and Vilka are. And as she's about to leave, Timis goes over to her and expresses his sorrow about what had happened and his deep regret. And Charlie obviously doesn't care. Charlie basically says, what's one genocide when you've already committed another? And Timis explains what happened with their makers. And this feeds into this story with these aliens. And you see the Kalon that they have, who's called K1, slowly developing an awareness and questioning things and asking why he's a servant when other people aren't. And the family, who seem this lovely family, start being a little antagonistic towards him. So they report it, and it turns out that this was something the manufacturers knew about, that they always knew the AI was going to develop and grow because they built it that way. And what they create is something that will trigger the pain receptors that they built into the system to keep the Kalon in line. The very pain receptors that can be changed to give a Kalon emotions and empathy. The problem is, as described in the program, a slave owner may come to hate his slave for their submissive nature. The first scene is the father of the family uses it when the Kalon refuses to do what he wants him to do because he's already been told to do something by the chap's wife. So he uses a pain receptor. Then the children are playing with him, switching him off, using this pain receptor constantly. Every time he tries to speak, they use the pain receptor. The Kalon then found a way to change their own programming, to connect to each other, to grow and develop, and came up with the idea of rebelling. And there's some quite nice, creepy, ominous scenes here of the Kalon appearing at the doorway. You see him killing the parents, and then whilst you don't see him killing the children, it's very apparent, which I thought was quite brave because that's something that isn't always in shows. And this kind of strikes a chord with Charlie. It reframes what she thinks about the Kalon, slightly anyway. So getting back to Isaac, he comes in, says to Timis and Vilka that he'd like them to do the operation. A little later, there's a ring at the door of Claire's quarters, and there's a box with a card on it, and the card says, "Come to dinner," and the box has a beautiful dress in it. And she walks in to the simulated restaurant that they always have dinner in. And it's a lovely little scene where she's looking at Isaac and Isaac smiles. It's a brilliant piece of acting, sorry to reduce it to that, but it's quite a strong, powerful scene because without saying anything, there's that communication between them of he finally feels upon seeing her what he feels inside but can't express. And she is suddenly aware that he has had the operation for her. And this is quite a nice scene because he expresses all his feelings that he's got for Claire, his love, his devotion, his want to connect with her children, to be what he could never be to them. So it's quite an emotional scene. Unfortunately, as they dance, it all goes away and Isaac reverts to his normal self. The next scene is in engineering with Lamar, Vika, Timis, Isaac and Claire. They discover that Timis was one of the original Kalons made by the makers, whilst Isaac was made by other Kalons, and therefore he's made slightly differently. And the emotions won't stick to his system as it is at the moment, but they say there is a way they can retrofit his system, thereby making the change permanent. However, the downside of this is it would erase his memory completely. Claire's a little horrified, bit of an extreme word, but you know, she doesn't look great about this. And Isaac just turns and says, "If you want me to do that, I'll do that. I'll do it." She's shocked. She says, "Why would you do that?" And he says, "I saw how happy you were. I saw how you reacted when I had the emotions whilst I don't remember them myself." And it's like an awakening moment for Claire, which kind of puts context to the selfish nature she had earlier, because she realizes that even without the emotion, that statement expresses love. The willingness to lose everything he is to make her happy, although that might not be how his logical brain is clicking it, but that's what it actually is. And there's quite a nice little phrase here where she sort of says, "So the choice is I can have his heart or his soul," because she's realised that the Isaac she loves is this Isaac, is Isaac who he's always been. Not this fantasy version of Isaac with the emotions, but this is the Isaac she loves. The final scene, which builds into and connects the two stories. Charlie comes up to Isaac in engineering, asking what he's doing. He tells her, she says, can she help? And he does his usual and said, well, you're human, you actually get in my way. At which point she starts apologising, stating that she never truly understood, never truly took the time to understand, because humans tend to see things in black and white, and how judging all Kalons based on the actions of some was wrong, a callback to the conversation at the meal. And Isaac accepts the apology. She begins to walk away, and Isaac turns and says, maybe you can help me. Again, it's those little incremental developments of the Kalon, the sense that they are growing beyond the logic. Specifically with Isaac, because he's been around humans and other sentient creatures for so long. But it will play into a later episode as well. But yeah, as I say, a seemingly simplistic episode, which does a great job at developing relationships, changing relationships, deepening others. On a second viewing, I definitely enjoyed it way more than the first time. Not that I didn't enjoy it the first time, but I got more out of it, I think, the second time. Anyway, I'll leave that there because I may have gone on in that one, actually. It's probably longer than I planned. My comic book is available from my website. The link is in the description below. Please like and subscribe and comment if you feel like it. Thank you very much, and peace out.